Brett is somebody who had it all. He had a promising sales career, he had the house, the wife, the family, and then he just realized he really didn't have it all. He was lacking purpose. So what do you do when you feel like you have all the boxes checked, but you're still missing the thing that's most important, and that's living with purpose? And that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode of Beyond the Rut. Welcome to Beyond the Rut, the podcast that shares encouraging stories and practical tools to help pull you out of your rut into a life worth living in your faith, family, and career. I'm your host, Jerry Dugan, and in this episode, we're going to be joined by Brett Snodgrass, who is an entrepreneur, as well as the founder of Iron Deep, where he helps entrepreneurial men who are Christians find their purpose, live with that purpose, and also enjoy the success they were meant to have. So sit back, relax, grab a notebook and a pen, because here we go. All right. Hey, Brett, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Jerry. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. Appreciate you, buddy.
Awesome. And where are you calling in from, in case somebody is listening who's not from Texas, or just to broaden the horizons of those of us who do live in Texas? There's more than one state, guys.
That is right. So I'm in my basement. So I got a studio in my basement. I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with my family. If my 5-year-old comes in, knocks on the door, sometimes she wants to give me a little note or a message. So there you go.
I know my son is going to come pick up my wife to go out for lunch real quick.
Oh, that's awesome.
They might knock and ask if I want anything.
There you go. So you can put it in your order to Chipotle, right? Or on the show.
Yeah. Oh, well, too late. She and I are going out for a Pentatonics concert after we're done here, actually. So we're going to go out for a late lunch, early dinner. And yeah, she planned it all. So I'm being the one wined and dined. That's kind of cool.
I've always wanted to see the Pentatonics. I've never actually seen them, but we listen to all their Christmas music. And I was always wondering, like, do they do other things besides Christmas music? Because I always crank them up during Christmas time. But
they got famous. Well, they were on that show. What was that show? It was all a cappella, the Sing Off.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And they didn't do Christmas songs for the competition, but I guess that's the thing that really hit with everybody. So,
I know. That's cool. Yeah. No, that's really cool. That's good. We'll go good, job with that, taking your wife out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, she's taking me out, so we'll see. Later. But yeah, we got you on here because one of the biggest things that really stood out to me about your own personal journey is it is, in essence, what Beyond the Rut's all about. It's that person who, they've got all the boxes checked of what success should look like. Other people have said you got to have this type of income, this kind of education, this kind of career, this kind of house, cars, all those things. And we tend to, as men, especially in the US, we tend to pursue those with a fervor, and we'll work ourselves to the bone. And then we hit that breaking point. And some of us realize, wait a second, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be more purpose behind what I'm doing. What am I doing? And what do I need to be doing? And then there are a lot of guys who never realize, and they just get right back in the grind, right back in the hustle. And you're one of those folks who took that step back, took a look around you and said, wait a sec, what am I doing? And so if you can get folks caught up on, like, what were you doing before that aha moment? And then what was that aha moment that said, I got to get out of this rut? Because this opened up the door for a whole lot of other cool stuff that you're doing now.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey. And so I grew up here in Indiana. My parents were both teachers. My dad was a high school basketball coach. So I didn't really grow up in a business entrepreneurial family, but I was always really interested in entrepreneurship, even at a young age. I would even buy candy at Sam's Club and go to school and sell it, right? I was always interested in buying and selling things. Always just kind of had that knack in my life. So fast forward, went to college. I got a teaching degree. I did that for about a year. And then I just read some real estate books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and read some of these entrepreneurial, other types of books. And we bought our first house around 2007. And that kind of opened up my doors to the entrepreneurship. And so since then, this was 16, 17 years ago, I've been in the real estate space. We've done a few thousand houses, I'd say, at this point. I have a small team here in Indianapolis, and it's been quite the journey. I am married. I have 4 children. So that just kind of, opens that up. But let me fast forward to really just about a few years ago. I was really kind of maybe in that rut a little bit. I had given my life to Christ at 30. So I was about 40 years old around this time. And I had, like you said, checked a lot of these boxes, but I was feeling just this nag of some of my passion had died out. I had some of my purpose, and I was burned out a little bit from just the business and the ups and downs for the past decade plus of doing this particular business. So I was able to just kind of take a step back, dream a little bit again, pray with God. I had a guy that was running a lot of the operations of our organization. And I started to look at my own life and started looking at other men's lives. And really, God just started igniting this fire and this passion for other entrepreneurial men just like myself. So we actually launched an organization called Iron Deep. And it is basically an organization for businessmen, Christian businessmen, and we had our first event last year, and it's new, it's young, but it really kind of helped me just get some of that passion and that fire back. I still do the real estate business, but one of my huge passion and my heart goes out to these men at Iron Deep. So that's a little bit about the journey. Kind of, I did it really fast, but that's where Iron Deep is born.
That's, I guess, the drawback when I say, yeah, and you'll have like 5 minutes to talk about this. Going a little bit deeper though, you'd mentioned that you felt like that passion was going away, that fire was going out, and particularly like with your faith journey, which, came at a later age. I was actually close to the same age when I received Jesus as my savior. I was about 29 and a half-ish. Within a few months, I hit 30, and it was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? So there's something about that age where you're just like, what?
Yeah.
How are things going on, like at home? Like as you were also feeling like this kind of monotony going on, because the rut is essentially a pattern of behaviors that are not productive for growth. And so what was going on like at home and in your own physical or emotional health at this time where things were just sort of fizzling out?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I am maybe like a lot of your listeners, I love the drive. I do love to create. I do love to build things and projects. And God's given me those resources and talents, and he's given me some of that drive. But like you said, a lot of times maybe it was just misplaced. Especially during some of the younger years of my life, it was all about success, money, recognition, power, who knew me. What kind of platform could I get on? And a lot of my life was really just about chasing those particular things. And it did affect many areas of my life. I sacrificed some of my health. I sacrificed some of, my family times together. So, when you talk about your show, kind of in that rut, I had been in the rut, ups and downs in the valleys, and also on the mountaintops throughout those years of my life, and really just kind of had to take this radical, honest look at myself, and like, what is my assignment? What is God really calling me to? And I don't want to, make a mistake where like, oh, I think a lot of men make this particular mistake, and I'm a businessman and he's calling me into full-time ministry. And I think that is a mistake sometimes men make, right? Because for me, he designed me as a guy who likes business, who likes to create. And I said, you know what, I don't want to maybe do this full-time ministry thing, but how can I use the skills and the resources and the network to be around guys like myself as a ministry? We use one of the things in our particular businesses. How can you use your business as a ministry, or a business disguised, or a ministry disguised as a business, right? And that's one of the things that we've done in the real estate space, and even at Iron Deep. That's one of the things. So, and then the other things is I can really relate to these guys just like you can. I mean, I'm in it. I'm leading this team. I'm leading my family. I'm still doing all of these different things. And so a lot of times, and again, one of the mistakes I think guys do is, they don't do, they just teach. But for me, I felt like it was just really important for me not to just teach, but also to be doing as well. So these are some of the feelings that I was feeling in this. And I think really the word that comes back to me is just that radical, honest reflection of where I was at. And I would just really encourage you guys to do that, to take a step back and just take a breath and just to be honest, where am I at with these different areas of my life, with my faith, with my family, with my career, with my health? And that's what I did for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, when I got to meet you a few months back, I was like, yes, this guy, he's like speaking my language, but different at the same time. It's the same. I'll get the Green Mile, same but different, Mr.
Right.
Coffee.
I love that movie.
A really good movie. Like I probably quote that guy way more than I should, but even
That's
things that are
awesome.
not the same, I'm like, yeah, it's the same but different. What?
Amen.
Not the same. But I really get what you're saying around like a lot of men, especially if we're in the business space or the corporate environment, we think that, the moment we receive Jesus as our savior and we start to understand like, hey, well, the disciples like gave up fishing to follow Jesus.
Mhm.
I need to give up carpentry, or I need to give up being in the oil field, or, corporate America, whatever it is. Like, I got to give this up and I got to do full-time ministry.
Mm.
And I admire the excitement and the passion that these folks have, but you could also tell, I don't think they've thought that through. Like, they
Mm.
haven't prayed about it. They just got excited in the rah-rah moment of the sermon. And, in that moment, like, I'm doing this. And,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
and I think again, I was talking to my pastor one time, and here's a quick story. And he was getting ready to become a pastor, and he was getting certified, and he had this mentor pastor, and his mentor pastor said, "Do you really want to do this?" And my pastor at the time says, "What do you mean? This is I want to give my life to the Lord. I want to go down this journey and become a pastor." And he says, "No, don't get me wrong. The reason why I ask is because his mentor used to be a business guy. He used to be in the marketplace." And he said, "I actually feel like sometimes I had more of an impact for the kingdom in the marketplace than I do as a pastor." Now, I think there's obviously, a huge place for both, but I think, one of the things I think the world needs is more marketplace leaders, more men taking a stance and stepping up for the kingdom in their businesses, leading their team, pouring into their team, doing those things that are kingdom minded and have biblical principles. I just think we just need more men like that. They don't get paid to be a pastor, or that's not their really vocation, but they're just living it out like the disciples, right? I think the
yes.
disciples also did things like build things or make tents or fish or whatever, to on the side to support themselves as well. Some did. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's brilliant. It's not really like bloom where planted. It's actually like your ministry field is where you're placed right now. And
mhm.
um, people need to see that it's different to be a Christian, but they need to see it not in a church. They need to see it right there next to them somewhere. And I've shared this story multiple times. I don't even remember who it was that shared it with me initially, but this person worked in the oil industry, specifically in sales. So this guy would connect with other oil industry companies and just wine and dine people.
Mm,
And in that particular industry, I don't know if it's still the same, but there's this like unspoken, but kind of everybody knows, there's this expectation that when you're wining and dining the leaders from another company, you not only take them out for steak, lobster, drinks, you also take them to a strip club. And
mhm.
it's like, yeah, we're men in the oil field. That's what
Yeah.
manliness is all about. And I remember one of these guys who was in uh, my church's men's group, or one of the men's groups at my church. And I was there at the table, and the guy is like struggling, and you just see this weight as we're having this discussion. I don't even remember what the topic was, but the leader of that table turned to him and said, "Hey, you look, don't know what the word is. You look detached. You look worried. You look like something's on
Mhm.
your mind or on your heart. What is it?" And the guy shared, like, everybody just got quiet and let this guy talk. And he said, "I hear what you're all saying about um, being an example, being an ambassador, and this is my job. And I'm expected to, like, this weekend, take, men out and do these things. And I
Mm,
don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to take them there. And at the same time, we need the job, we need the income, and there's a bunch of other things we got to fix in the meantime. And so they said, well, what happens if you align your values with what you do? What's at risk? And they said, well, I'll
Yeah.
get fired. We lose accounts, and then I got to go get a new job. But you just said you probably can't stay at that job anyway, right? Like,
Right.
you can't in good conscience stay there. And he
Hmm.
said, yeah, that's true. And so they're like, so what would you do if you need the money, but you also need to be in alignment with what you believe is right? What would you do? And he said, well, I'll still take them out for dinner. I'll take them out for drinks. And then I'm just going to dismiss them after that and go back to my hotel room and get a good night's sleep and see what happens.
Right.
And we're like, great. So this might be the last time you do it. Who knows? And
Right.
so he went, like, we all dispersed. We got back together again. And that was like the first question. We all wanted to know, how did it go? And
Right.
the group leader already knew because he called the guy the next day after this powwow with these leaders. And the guy was just beaming. He's like, oh man, let me tell you. What I was saying, like, I met them all. I got them picked up. We all met at this restaurant. We had steak. We had, all of that. We had a few beers, and that was it. We talked about, hey, we're going to see each other at this location. I'll have drivers pick y'all up. I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. You all have a good night. And that was it. Boom.
Yeah.
That was all he was paying for. There was no,
Mhm.
like, if you go here, tell them I sent you. None of that. It was just like,
Mhm.
all you got is dinner and where to meet tomorrow, and I'm sending a driver to get you. And he thought, oh my gosh, this is it. I'm going to get fired. They're not even going to be there tomorrow. And he said that for the rest of that trip, plus well after that trip, every single guy on that trip that was a client or a customer or a what do you call them, a prospect, they all were like, I got to tell you, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you for not taking me to some strip club. It's the one thing I hate about this job. And I was dreading meeting you. I was dreading hanging out with you, but I had to because my company sent me. And I
Right.
was just like talking to my wife, like, man, I hate this. I'm just going to be sick. Like, the moment it's time to be in the strip club, I got a tummy ache. Like, I was going to fake that. And if that cost us any relationship, so
Oh
be it.
my gosh, that's so cool.
If you ended it where you did, I didn't have any of that on me. Thank you. Please, let's just not ever go to a strip club. And he was like, he had multiple conversations like that. He's like,
Wow.
man. And so he had to do that again with some other clients, and he just kept repeating it. And what he found was, not only were they doing more business, they were thanking him for not taking him to a strip club. And I was
Wow.
like, wow, like, leap of faith. And then you see the
Yes.
benefit of that, and you get that alignment, and he kept his job and he moved up because his numbers look great.
Wow, that is cool. And it's just that it's like, yeah, he was honest with himself, he was honest with them and didn't know how it would go, taking the risk, but yeah, I just got huge rewarded. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I love it.
Oh yeah. And I loved hearing stories like that and seeing that happen, and also experiencing it in my own life where it's like, this isn't right. I got to do something different. And, that was everything from either confronting somebody or saying, I got to resign from this job. But in every case, somebody would come forward to me and say, thank you so much for doing that. You set an example for me. You help me realize there is a better way. I don't have to compromise myself or my values to
Mm,
work here or to work anywhere or to do
yeah,
this or that. I was like,
yeah.
man, this is so cool.
And
Uh,
that's one of the things I think in the real estate space that we did. So just to take myself back, I mean, I started in the real estate game when I was about 27, and I was not a Christian. And I was chasing after money. I had a 2-year old. Well, I had my daughter by the time I was 30. She was about 2, 3 years old, and that's when I gave my life to Christ. So quick story testimony was I found myself again really in the rut. I chased after all these things, living in a pretty nice home, had a nice car, and I was completely miserable, completely empty. So that was really where started my journey of coming to Christ. About 6 months and 9 months of getting around some other guys that were Christians, mentoring me, and really wrestling with this topic of is this true? Right? I think that was the big thing. Is this real? Is this true? Is God who He says He is? Is Christ really the Son of God? And after about 9 months, that's where I gave my life to Christ. So fast forward just a few years, I started what we call our company now Simple Quarters. I said I want a very simple business. Um, and I want to, flip a lot of, I want to flip houses and still do this particular business, but I want to do it God's way. And so that's why if you actually check out some of our real estate content, Simple Quarters, and we're very open about who we are. We're very open about our faith. We pray in our meetings, and we talk about God and the opportunities that He's given us. We even pray for some of our clients. That's how I've decided to lead. So we've been doing that for about 9-10 particular years in that particular business, and He's blessed us. It's been awesome. Now some of our employees, they're not even Christians, but they also know where I stand, and like, this is who I am, which is the business is an extension of myself. So if you don't want to say the prayer, that's fine. We're still going to do that. We're still going to pray and lead that way. So some people, again, they might be turned off or turned on, but again, this is just where I stand, right? And that's just one thing. I think you've done that. I've seen other companies do that that I follow, and just kind of putting their faith out there, just being an extension. Their business can be an extension of that, and you can bless people. And you don't have to put it, in people's face per se, but again, they know where Brett stands. And this is why we do what we do. So
yeah. And they start to connect those dots, though, of like, whether you are openly saying it or doing a prayer or leading a Bible group in the workspace, like on a lunch break or something, people start to realize, though, like, even if you just are the person who shows up and you're that person they could turn to, and you're going to listen to them
for sure,
and be there and empathize with them. And, but they could tell, like, anybody can do those things. You can do empathy. It's not solely just Christian, or
right? For sure.
Somebody that's not solely Christian, but then there's that extra little, there's something else there. Like, there's a peace of mind that this person has that they probably shouldn't have, but they have it. What is that? And then that's when they start to ask, like, what is that it factor you've got that I can't put my finger on? And then that opens up the door. You can have this conversation, and it makes me actually think of this, how cool is this for a segue, which kind of ruins it that I said how cool is this for a segue, but your book, or Within,
yes,
would have been cool until Jerry said that. So you wrote a book, The Secret War Within, and it tells the story of a guy named Nolan. And I was going gaga over this. I'm still reading it, but I was going gaga over it before we hit record, because this show's got an avatar named AJ, and as I'm reading the story of Nolan unfold, he works in business. He's I forget what kind of company already. It wasn't real estate.
It was a real estate developer. So
real estate.
A lot of it probably takes after some of my own background, but
what? No way. But it was so powerful, because as I'm reading the opening chapter, I'm like, that's the story of AJ. Like, if somebody were to come along and say, hey, let's make a movie out of AJ's life, AJ's fictitious guys, but built on some folks I know. I'm part of AJ, but like, if somebody were to take AJ's short little chapter of my book and actually write a whole book, a whole story, and that person's transformation step by step, even that leap of faith to go and follow an invitation he received, like, that's the book, The Secret War Within. And it's like, Nolan, this real estate developer who's got this company, he's working long hours. He is disengaging from his wife. He doesn't know how to get that back. And are they just roommates? And the kids just want attention and connection with dad. And he's like, well, I'm busy. I just want to detach. I just want to diffuse. And I'm like, yes, I've described AJ this way just verbally on other people's shows, but I'd never written that out. And it was so cool, like, to see him take that leap of faith. I'm at the part where he's now at the ranch, and he's getting, I'm assuming, learning about himself and what needs to be done differently. And there's a whole lot more book left. There we go. I'm trying to, like, what happened to my words here? But I mean, kudos to you for putting that together and sharing it with folks, because this leads into Iron Deep and all the work you do. But ideally, like, who should get this book right now, the moment they hear this episode?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, number one, I mean, this was a labor of love. Yeah, The Secret War Within. We put this together. It took about a year and a half to really put this whole thing together. And I've never written a book before. I appreciate the readers, and the response has been just amazing because you put so much passion and thought, and you spend so many hours on your own or praying through what God wants you to put on these pages. And finally, when people get to read it and the response is good, you're like, wow, this actually resonates with people, really. And I knew it resonated with me because it was just, part of my own life. But who should particularly read this book? Number one, men, right? And I think, and it probably resonates more with that man who is chasing success, which typically is most men. They're chasing something, success or power or control, and some of these different things that maybe they're struggling with internally. So really, the secret war within comes from Nolan Banks in this particular story, that he is struggling with some of these internal things within. And I really try to pinpoint some of the key and main struggles of a man's life. Some of these key and main struggles that I've struggled with even in my own life. And a lot of them come from lust, right? Nolan secretly struggles with lust, which has been every man's battle for hundreds of years. So, and we see that even in the Bible, right? Men struggle with this carnal desire or lust that this intimacy that God designed between a husband and a wife, and it can be so beautiful and so destructive at the same time. And as I see men that have had so much destruction in their life, a lot of it stems from this struggle with lust, whether they're pornography or just looking, or whatever that looks like in their own life. They struggle with that. You also see Nolan, again, as I talked about, he struggles with this strong desire to be successful and to be known, and to be powerful. And he wants, all these different material things in his life. And he's been chasing that for years, thinking that, again, it might fill something, that maybe he'll one day reach a point that he's made it.
Yeah.
But the point never comes, and he keeps moving it further and further and further along, and the hole inside just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and he can't quite understand why that he's feeling this way. And really, that's where the story opens up. And then he gets invited on this adventure. And again, probably relates to my life or your life. The adventure is, a lot of it is about himself. A lot of it is about, what's the Father say? What does God say about him? Who he really is when everything's stripped away. Like, a lot of it is about identity. And then he starts to really dig down deep and discover his own identity that doesn't have to be attached to these things. He can still do these things. These things can still be a part of his life. I'm not saying that, just like my own life. Like, I can still run a business and still do these certain things, but there's a difference between doing it and defining you, right?
Yes.
I think that's the big difference, because this stuff is temporary. I mean, you're going to go through seasons of your life where you're not going to be doing these certain things anymore. And sometimes I relate it to, I was a basketball player in high school and in college, and basketball was my life. Everything revolved around basketball. My feelings of highs and lows revolved around how well I was doing on the basketball court. And then when I was 23, that ended. And now I'm 43, and that doesn't affect my life that much today like it did when I was 23 or 22 years old. And I think that can still, the same thing as with these other things that you're doing, right? Your life is revolving around money, let's say, well, maybe in 20 years from now, when I'm 63 years old, I'm probably going to say the same thing I did about basketball when I was 23. That, like, why did I take it so seriously? Why did it affect my life so much? So the book really is revolving around identity. You can still do these things, but don't let it define you. And these are some of the things that I still struggle with. It depends on, how close I am to the Lord. But, am I spending my time with him? Am I, leaving my hands open and complete surrender to him? And I think a lot of men relate to that. And it's really the whole adventure and journey is this with Secret War Within with Nolan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I love it. I love, the part where I'm in the book where he took the invitation from his friend Henry, got in his car, he's driving 9 hours to this ranch, and he's questioning it. He's like, what am I even doing? I'm driving 9 hours to meet who knows who. And
Yeah.
and it just made me think about, we start to change ourselves. We are going into the unknown. We're making new relationships. We're taking a different approach than we ever have. And it's easy to say, I'm putting my guard back up. And I've seen that in men's groups where, somebody's about to have a breakthrough and then you never see them again. And it's, no one seems to be going in the opposite direction. It's like, no, I need to do something different, because if I don't, everything's going to be ruined. I'm going to lose my family. I'm never going to know my kids. He's seeing the heartbreak in his own children, just in that one interaction. And like, they're even praying, like, we'd love to have more time with dad. And you're like, oh, knife out of the chest. No. Now I'm going to bleed out. And so he's like, he gets his first moment of, I wouldn't call it comeuppance, but maybe that what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They ask him, like, this guy Pete and Sam, they're the guys in the pickup. They're like, hey, so Nolan, who are you?
Yeah.
Like who are we riding with here? And he's like, oh, and he gives them the typical American man answer. Well, I'm a real estate developer. I own this many properties. This is how big of an awesome business person I am. Insert all cool accolades here.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, cool. Yeah, I've been up there before. Neat.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah, I know.
Like, yeah.
And I've even done that too. It's so funny. Like our response when someone asks us, what do you do? Or who, most of the time it's what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
We come out with this response, and sometimes, we have this like 5-minute spiel where we just listed all these amazing things. And then even afterwards, I'm like, dude, you're such a schmuck. Like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to impress these people? And I've even had that, when I ask people just in general, and they list all these different highlights, and I'm like, what? I don't know. It's just kind of an odd thing that we want to impress people. Like we want to so bad for people to know all of these things, even though we might have some of these other struggles. We don't want them to know that, but we want to impress them so much. We want them to like us so much. And it's crazy how, like, I did a presentation one time. It's like, it's not even good enough to be successful these days. You have to be really successful, and everyone's got to know about it. Right? That's it. Like, because if no one knows about it, no one cares. And you don't even feel that. Anyways, it's kind of
it's that whole keeping up with the Joneses thing. I've got to have the house that's the nicest on the street. The car in the driveway has got to be better than everybody else's. And it's all because my job is better than your job. And it's like, wow, why does any of that matter? And I don't know if it's because I've served in combat, and it's just like there was a realization, after I think the first firefight, maybe it was before that even. I was like, I get a combat patch for this. And I'm like, that patch means nothing if I die in the process. The medal they give me won't matter. And my daughter was about to be born during this time. My son was about a year and a half, almost 2 years old. And it was just that aha, like, I'm going to get all kinds of awards, and my career will, if I stay in the military, my career is going to skyrocket because I'll be a war veteran. But I just kept thinking, but what does it matter if I die? Now my kids are robbed of a dad. My wife is robbed of a husband for the time being. She'll meet somebody, but I don't get to be the guy anymore. And that just upset me till no end. And then it was like, well, what if I don't die, but I make a career out of this? Well, I'm a combat veteran now, which means I'm pretty much going to redeploy over and over and over again. am I really gonna know my kids? Am I going to know my wife? Or are we just gonna be roommates? So it was like the Nolan experience here, but through the military lens, and that is what drove me to get out. It was sort of like, can I create the life I really want? And the answer was no. And does it matter if I get out before I become a staff sergeant or sergeant first class or become an officer even? And, will there ever be a book written about me and my adventures in the military? And it's like, yeah, none of that matters to me anymore. And so I got out. And then, it was after that, 2 years after that, I finally became a Christian. But all that to say, like, I still run into people. Like, I'm 47 now, and in my previous career, I ran into people who were very much defined by their corporate career. Like, their job position meant so much to them. Like, if you took that away, who are they? And I'm like, maybe you're still you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't
I
have
think
that
it's nice.
confidence.
I think it's actually really healthy, just to kind of go through that process. I mean, so for me, and I don't think until you're out of it, until you do something for just for an extended period of time that's different. I know for me, like I was running a real estate company for 15 plus years. I was a CEO. People knew me, not big, but just in my communities of the guy who does that. And then I offered it to a CEO who ran the company. But I remember really that next week or that week after waking up and not having a lot to do, asking myself these certain questions like, well, what do I do now? Who am I? And I think it just took that period of time to start to wrestle with that. And I didn't know it. If people would have said, I wouldn't have said this defined me and controlled me. But until I was out of it, it definitely did. Another thing I just want to say is that, again, going back to, you can still do those things, because real estate's done a lot for me. It's given me maybe a platform of a like-mindedness now to speak into other men's lives that maybe I couldn't have done before. And this is a very unique group, and this is where Iron Deep comes into play. I do not feel qualified to speak into these men's. Like, some of these men's are, again, they're like Nolan. They're very successful, more on a worldly, more successful than I am, and I've have this this platform that I can facilitate and pour into these men's lives, and I really don't feel qualified. But that's a great place to be, I think, because God can call you, right? I mean, look at the characters in the Bible. He calls the unqualified for his purposes, and he gives me the strength to do that. But the reason why I say that is now what I do in further real estate doesn't define me, but I still do it so that I can have, again, this platform and this qualification to speak into these men's lives. So I think, again, one of the big mistakes is we stop doing some of these different things to go do this because we think God is calling us to this mission over here. But maybe the question is, how can you shift that around, and can this be your mission in your already sphere? My perspective has also changed, and this gets into the book a little bit as well, is that I used to think that, and I struggled with, how much is enough, like money, right? How much money is enough? I'm a Christian man. I don't need to make a lot of money. This point that over this number is too much, and it feels icky, right? I need to not do that. So I would sabotage myself a little bit. But now my perspective has changed into, you know what? This is just all God's anyways. Like, it's completely surrendered to him. It's completely surrendered to his kingdom. So if I make a bunch of money, that's fine, because it's just all going to the kingdom, right? And it's just all going to impact. My lifestyle is not going to change that much. But before, the perspective was, Brett's gonna live this upgraded lifestyle. And then maybe that was the wrong question, right? It was the wrong question, that how much is enough, because it was all just about Brett's lifestyle. But now it's just like, this is all surrendered. Make as much as you can that God is going to bless you with. It's just all going to the kingdom. So anyways, here's a couple of things that I've had some revelations here recently.
Yeah, it's just a looser grip on money in general. It's like, it's just a resource, and I'll have what I need to have,
Yeah.
as well
And
as,
people ask me like the love of money thing. And the scripture that says money's not the root of all evil, it's the love of money. And really, God, I think it's just a heart issue. It's just like, do you really even care? Like, if I have a lot of money, great. If I don't, great. It's all the kingdoms anyways. And let's just go. So
yes. Yes, I love that, and so the work you're doing with Iron Deep, I know retreats is a big part of it, and so you have men come together and they go through a transformational experience. Um, how do they find that? Like, and say, and what can they expect when they go on one of these retreats?
yeah, I mean, definitely. So iron deep really comes from iron sharpening iron and really just building that deep relationship with God and each other. Um, I think, that is one of the missing pieces of this. If you look at Nolan Banks in this book, I mean, he struggles with intimacy. And when men start to get real and they get intimate with another person or with God, they back away, right? You said, there's guys maybe in small groups that are about to have breakthrough and they're starting to open up and they're starting to get to the root of the problem. And then for some reason, they block it and they self-destruct and they just back away. So I want to develop this organization that we started off with these 3-day intensive retreats because I wanted to intensify the relationship between them and their father and each other. So that's where we started with these 3-day programs that are structured that way. What can they experience? Again, I think it's intimacy and brotherhood are probably the key words. We typically have these off the beaten path in the mountains somewhere. We in a very undistracted environment. We rent out a very large log cabin, like a home-like environment. If you read the book, Welcome Home is kind of like one of the taglines that he gets invited, and you keep hearing, welcome home. And I just think, again, that's like what the Father is saying to us. Like, he wants us to come home. So we have these events in a home-like environment, again, just to build the intimacy with God and each other, that comfortable, undistracted environment. So that's typically where we have these types of events. We start off with these 3-day intensive retreats, and then we just kind of go from there. The mission is to start off there to intensify the relationships. And then from there, we're building out small groups of 10 to 12 guys that want to really do life together. This next year, we're going to have a 12-month program of 10 to 12 guys that have been to this particular event that want more to really, to sharpen and grow in their faith, to sharpen and really and grow in their family and their deep relationships. And then they're sharpen and grow in their business. Like I said, these are business guys. God has given them the talent and the resources and the treasures to be able to create and do these certain things. And what better way for me to like increase a Christian man's business that is fully surrendered for the kingdom. And that's just what we do. So those three areas are what we really focus on at Iron Deep. So again, yeah, retreats where we start, but then really that life group brotherhood is where we're going.
Love it. Love it. And as the original host of the show used to say, this is Brandon, he would go, boom.
Love it.
And I'm like, what's up the mic? We still need these. And so, folks, you can go to irondeep.com and check out those retreats, see when the next ones are happening, sign up for one, get out there and see that life change happen. But also check out the book, The Secret War Within. It's available on Amazon. I'm still working through it because I want to write a really awesome review for this book. Plus, it's got me interested. I'm like, what are they going to do to this guy? And I got an idea, but I still want to know. Like, it's written so well. I've read other, allegories in Christian, even Christian fiction, but there's always like this weird cheesiness to it. And so far, I don't have this cheesiness in this book, which I love.
Good. So, I mean, that's the one thing I wanted it to really read to the masculine soul. And again, I didn't want to hold back either. I mean, there was a lot of conversations that I had with my writing mentor that kind of helped me with some thoughts. And I kept asking my mentor, like, am I going too far? Am I going too deep or too dark on some of these areas that men struggle with? And they just said, go go where you feel called to go. We can always pull it back.
Yeah.
And so I wanted this kind of gritty book that was for the masculine soul, that was, not the Hallmark cheesiness as well. So
it's working. It's got me in here and I'm reading the whole thing. So Brett, before we go though, any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, man, I would just say, I would just encourage you, Jerry, and all your listeners, just to sit back and reflect on, like, your call, or, your assignment. We're all in this together, and he's calling us to something significant, purpose for your life. And it doesn't have to be something completely different, but what is that? And what is your passion? What is your calling? What is he assigning you to? And this is what I felt like he was calling myself to, and some of the other guys. Love to see if you're listening at an Iron Deep, and we're looking for people that want to go all in, that want to be a part of a mission together. But I would just encourage you just to sit, spend that time with him in solitude, or with some other guys that love you, and start wrestling with some of these questions, this assignment and calling. A book that I'm actually going through right now is Experiencing God. It's an old book. It's a study, just a great study about, how do we experience God? What does he want us to experience? What is his assignment for our life? And how do we find that out? So that's my last words for today. I appreciate you having me on the show, Jerry.
Awesome, Brett. Great to have you on here.
Wow. I hope you took a lot of notes like I did, and enjoyed this conversation, as well as got inspiration, as well as ideas to find your purpose and launch into what you were meant to do. Now, if you want to join Iron Deep, I'll put the information in the show notes at beyondtherut.com/409. There you'll also find related episodes with guys like Aaron Walker and so many more people. Now, I'm glad you joined me in this episode of Beyond the Rut, and I'd like to see you again on the next one. But until then, go live life beyond the rut. Take care.